I think the very first Avatar, I learned that you don't debate with someone like Jim Cameron. Jim Cameron almost lives for a debate. His comment to me was, no one's ever watched a movie and said that movie sucked, but hey, they finished on budget and on time. And working on Avatar, there's nothing like it. The movie is just extensive. The fight on the ship, when the ship tilted over and went underneath, that was an awful lot of work. Conor McGregor, what a gentle giant, what an amazing person to work with. Hugh Jackman, no one is more professional than he is. He's amazing. I can't tell you how great it is to work with someone like that on a movie set. He does all the action himself.
What was your experience like working with Steven Spielberg?
I love working with Steven. He's an amazing storyteller. There is nobody better when it comes to storytelling than him.
Hello, Garrett.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks.
How's the weather over there? Are you in California?
Los Angeles, yeah. It's great. It's beautiful.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
I really loved what you did with Avatar. I've rewatched both movies twice, and rarely do I watch a movie twice, but it hits the second time. It's even though it's so long, just watching it sort of really catalyzed me. I wanted to just get someone that worked on the movie onto the podcast. So thank you.
My pleasure. I mean, I appreciate you saying what I did on the movie, but I have to admit, that's all Jim. I mean, yes, I helped, execute what he wanted, but that's all Jim.
I was watching a podcast conversation of yours where you're talking about your experience working with James Cameron, and you have this ability. I think it was a story shared, maybe it was a different director, but you might do something, the director might come in and say, man, this is so shit. And you might be like, yeah, you're right, this looks bad. I wasted a ton of money on this budget. And then you have this ability to sort of just brush things off and just go back at it and try again. Where did that come from, Garrett?
I'm not entirely sure. I think I think the very first Avatar, I learned that you don't debate with someone like Jim Cameron. Jim Cameron almost lives for a debate. He's the kind of person that when you put up a wall and say no, he's going to do everything to prove you wrong and show you that you're wrong. So instead of you meeting someone head on and trying to renegotiate what just happened, the best thing to do is be like a bullfighter and just sidestep and let it go by you. And so that's what I liken it to. When he says, this is horrible, I go, absolutely. And then they look at you like, all right, well, then why'd you do it so horribly? Well, obviously, because I didn't know what you wanted, but now I do, and it's not that. So let's go back to the drawing board and fix it. I mean, I thought that was good, but obviously I'm wrong. So in the end, if you meet someone head on and you're on a movie set, you have to realize that my job is to be facilitating the director with what they want, not trying to change his mind and show him what I want. So when I'm sent off to do a job for someone like that, like a Jim Cameron or a Steven Spielberg or anybody, my job is to get them exactly what they want. And if they say, this is not what I want, I have to tell them, right, you're right. My job is to be a good Indian and execute what you want. And so when they say, I don't like it, I go, okay, great. Now, mind you, I do have to admit, there's been many a times where he said he didn't like something that I did, and it still wound up in the movie. He was the one that even told me, chances are he might be wrong. He might not like what he wants, but he won't know until he sees it. So if you don't give him exactly what he's seeing, then how can he know if it was good or bad? And I agree with him in that sense. If you have a list of things that you want to do and you'd like to see if they work, you'd like to see them work, instead of just trying to be spoon-fed something else. So that's why in the end, even though something I do might end up in the movie, I still have to show him what he is asking for first.
I loved how you also talked about how you would have a backup idea. You'll have your backup set up on the side in case what the director wanted didn't work. And it does require a level of sort of egolessness and a humbleness to just follow what is asked, but then at the same time have the foresight to have a backup plan tucked away on the side.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what my job is. I have to be humble. I have to be a really good servant to the director's desires. But at the same token, I have to be sitting there with a safety net and say, okay, you might not have liked that, but what about this? And giving someone choices is what makes my job so valuable for them. If I come with just one thing, then anybody could do that. But if I give them choices, then they have a chance to not waste time. And that's my job.
How did you get into sort of stunt work, Garrett?
I didn't want to do it at first. I was in California helping a buddy open a gym, and I was a professional fighter at the time. I did martial arts and all sorts of stuff. And the people I was training were the likes of like Wayne Gretzky and Shaquille O'Neal and, Jada Pinkett Smith. And those people were coming to the gym. And there was a producer that also came. And while he was there, he looked at me and said, you don't look anything like the actor, but your skill is amazing. Why don't you come out to Hawaii and double this actor for us for a little while? And I said, okay, great. And that's what got me in the business. I was in the right place at the right time.
Huh. And then now you're sort of doing stunt coordination. How long have you been in this space, and what was that trajectory like from being a stunt double to what you're doing now?
I started in 1990. It was a progression of being stunt double to fight choreographer to stunt coordinator to second unit director, which is where I am right now. And currently now I write scripts and I'm getting ready to direct as soon as we cast these other projects that I'm assigned on to do. I have two other movies that I'm going to direct right now. And as soon as we get cast, then we'll go ahead and start those movies too. So it took from 1990 all the way to 2024 for me to be able to be the director that I am today to direct first unit.
In the business you are in, Garrett, is there that sort of snowball effect where it's getting easier and easier each year and you get more and more sort of confidence that there is going to be a project lined up? Or is it still just as uncertain and you sort of go with the flow?
I mean, I've never had that ability to just, feel like, that confidence that I'll have a job no matter what. I mean, I was born and raised that, you're only as good as your last job. There's 5 people out there that can do your job better, and if you don't stay on top of your game, if you don't keep pushing and hustling, then someone's going to take your spot. That's the way I was raised. And so, yes, fortunately for me, there's always a job that comes knocking on the door. However, it might not always be the job that I want. And I'll be honest with you, it's not getting easier. This movie industry is filled with new people, new talent, new ideas, and nobody wants to see the same thing again. So you're always having to come over and think of something new, something different, something that hasn't been done. So that's just always hard.
What's your sort of view on sort of relationships? Does relationships help you? Like if you get close with a director and you might be top of mind for their future projects, does building more relationships help secure more potential future jobs?
Relationships are everything, and it's not just the director. It's actually building a relationship with like the first AD. The first AD, you'd be surprised, but that first AD will put your name up for so many jobs that he's on, and he's always, first boots on the ground. When a director is getting ready for their movie, they call for a first AD first, and the other people that you should look to create a great relationship with are like the line producer or the unit production manager, the UPM or the line producer. Those people also, they get on the movie very early and they say, don't worry, I have a great stunt coordinator. You're going to love him, So it's not just the director. A lot of times a director will have to acquiesce who they want because of where they're filming. Sometimes a director that loves me is filming in England, and it's going to cost them twice as much to fly me from the United States to England. So they end up having to choose someone in England, which is okay. But I'm just saying that as much as a director is on your side, sometimes they're handcuffed. And so being good with the director, the first AD, the line producer, the UPM, those relationships are going to serve you very well.
That's so cool. When there isn't a job lined up, Garrett, like what can you do? What can you control? Is there anything you can do?
What can I control when there's no job lined up? I mean, when there's no job lined up, then you basically start knocking on doors. You start calling all the people, the first ADs that you've worked with, the directors that you've worked with, the producers that you worked with, the actors that you worked with. You reach out to them and say, what are you doing? You want to go grab coffee this week? You sit down, you start talking to them. Lo and behold, something happens. Or you ask them to play golf. You go out and play golf, and while you're on the course, they're telling you about, David Ayers getting ready to shoot Beekeeper. He called me to work on the film. What are you doing? The next thing you know, you got to realize in this business, out of sight out of sight, out of mind. And the more you are kicking dust up, the more people will see you. So if you stay away from all those people, chances are they're going to be looking to the people that are immediately around them. It's your job when you don't have a job to try and create that job in that way. The other way is when I don't have a job, I wind up trying to shoot my own stuff. I wind up trying to shoot like little short movies, independent ideas, things like that. Sit down, start writing scripts, go out, start talking to producers and studios and try to tell them, got a great idea. You'd be surprised at how, for the last 2 years, I had this script that I wrote and I've been pitching it through producers and studios. And every time I'm going through the production process, they're like, oh, you know what? We have another movie going in South Africa. Would you like to come and help on it and be the second unit director? So it's like all of a sudden those things open doors. And the more you do that, the more people will see that you're more of a filmmaker than just a stunt person, that you're multifaceted. And that's important in this business.
So cool. How long have you been writing? You talked about sort of writing scripts. How long has that journey been, Garrett?
About 4 years now, and I'm finally getting good at it. So don't think it happens overnight. If you want to become a really good writer, read a lot of scripts. You can get them online, read a lot of scripts, see the ones that work, see the ones that you like, see the styles that, people are using out there. It's all about pacing. And then once you create a script that you can read and it's easy to read and it's not hard to read, then it's all about creating something that's interesting. And once you do that, the world's going to respond and knock on your door.
Did you get better at writing through just writing multiple scripts, multiple stories, or just working a lot on one?
You know what? I worked a lot on one. I probably worked about a year and a half on one. However, I got better at writing when I started writing the other two scripts on top of that. I've wrote 3 movies basically, and to be quite honest with you, the one that I wrote that I'm working on right now to direct, that we're at the studio level with, that one took me about 2.5, 3 years, but recently I started writing these other 2 movies. And it's amazing how I look back at the one that it took me 2 years to write and how I see a lot of things that I'm going to change now. It's amazing how faster I make my scripts readable. And that's kind of important. I don't make them so wordy anymore. I make them quick. I make them move. I get to the point. I allow you to see that, the story is unfolding quickly in front of you. So you want to read the next page. But at the same token, I make some interesting word choices and some interesting, sentence choices. And that's the way to do it.
Are you writing action-based movies based on your background or not necessarily?
No, it's all action. I mean, John Landau, the producer of Avatar, said, do what you know best, kid. The other thing he told me is, whatever you do, don't be mired in mediocrity. You can go out there and you can become either the superstar that you are in the stunt world, or you could be a director that's trying to write and direct movies that are mediocre, and you'll get lost in society. And he says, the last thing you want to do is be stuck in mediocrity.
That's amazing. Do you see the next sort of chapter of your life doing a lot of directing? Is that something you feel really passionate about?
Yeah, directing, producing, and writing. That's the next chapter of my life.
Are there any sort of takeaways that you've gotten working with directors that you'll probably take on as a director as you become that?
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, yes, so much. Like Jim Cameron, his comment to me was, no one's ever watched a movie and said that movie sucked, but hey, they finished on budget and on time. I was asking him, do you ever get tired of coming in over budget and way over time? That was my comment to him, because we were sitting there on Avatar and we were like years over budget. And I look at him, I go, Titanic, you were way over too, right? He goes, yep. I go, did you ever get tired of it? Do you ever get tired of being over budget and over time? And he said, Garrett, no one ever went to a movie and said, hey, that movie sucked, but at least it finished on budget and on time. And after that, I said, yeah, touche, you're right. And he goes, the last thing I want to do is someone to see my movie and think that it was mediocre. And so that is the key. I got that from him. Now, it's a double-edged sword, because when you're first starting out as a director, the last thing you want to do is create a name for yourself that you're difficult and you're going to overspend on money or time. So you have to be very careful about that.
When you say, is it tired going over budget over time, is he constantly sort of arguing and discussing with execs, trying to convince them to get more money? Like, how does he keep pushing things each time?
It's not that. It's the fact that he's just, he loves story and he loves character and he has these ideas. And sometimes the ideas are amazing and they work out perfectly. And sometimes they don't work. And trust me, this is every director. Spielberg, it doesn't matter. When you get out there, sometimes some things just don't work. And when you see it, you say to yourself, okay, how am I going to fix that? Some directors just have to deal with what they were dealt. And they say, okay, great. This is unfortunate, but I'm just going to move on. Jim's not that guy. Jim is a perfectionist. And when he sees that, he says, no, we have to take the time and figure this out. And when the studio says, you don't have the money or the time, you know what? He's like Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk took a test called the Kobayashi Maru. He's the only person to have ever passed that test. And you know how he passed that test? He cheated. He went in the night before and he rigged the machine.
In a lot of your interviews, I loved all the stories of you working with Jim. Any stories, and what was your experience like working with Steven Spielberg?
I love working with Steven. He's an amazing storyteller. There is nobody better when it comes to storytelling than him. And don't get me wrong, I think Jim is is possibly the greatest director I've ever seen, and he's an amazing storyteller as well. Steven's a different kind of storyteller. Steven's the kind that like fairy tale books are made out of, like Hook and things like that, and it's a little bit more family oriented in that sense. Jim makes movies that are not just based in like scientific exploration and fantasy world that's going on in the future, but he's also got this great ability to ground things and make them come to life in that sense. I don't know. It's one of those things where working with Tim Burton, he's a completely different person. He's amazing. He's an introvert. He tells you things when you need to know it. Spielberg, he's going to just impart the knowledge through a certain amount of people, and those people have to disseminate it amongst the rest of the people. Jim just shares it with everyone, and he's just constantly, doing everyone's job probably better than all of us, to tell you the truth. So it's wild to see this difference of directors. Paul Thomas Anderson, he's another kind of genius when he directs as well, and he's got this ability to talk to actors and create a wild understanding of what they're talking about, what they're doing. So it's interesting when you come to see that idea.
How was it working on Avatar 1 versus Avatar 2 and these upcoming sequels? Because there was like a big gap from Avatar 1 and 2.
Oh, how is it like working on the movies? It's amazing. It's the greatest thing in the world. Jim is the greatest like buddy to ever have in this business and hang out with, and he's the greatest teacher in this business. Yeah, there was a big gap, and of course I went off and did Logan and all sorts of other movies while I was in that gap. But at the same token, as soon as we got back together, it felt like no time had passed whatsoever. We just picked it up right where we left off. The time goes by quickly because you're working on other shows. But as soon as you get on these other shows, you realize, what you have with Jim is so special and you can't wait to get back on it. And that's what it's like to, have that gap in between. And working on Avatar, there was nothing like it. The level of ability that you are given, the freedom to do what you need to do, the time amount that you can do it in, it's great. Love it.
Watching Avatar 1 and 2, what were the most extensive stunts that you sort of organized in those movies?
Oh, I mean, the whole movie is just extensive. The fight on the ship, when the ship tilted over and went underneath, that was an awful lot of work. And we did that on stage as well as in the tank, as well as live action in New Zealand. I mean, it's one big that's impossible to say. I don't know. It's one of those things where we've got a lot of action in Avatar. We are, neck deep in its story. So they go hand in hand, and there is no disconnect between both. So you are constantly trying to make things bigger and better and wilder. When you're working with Navi and you're trying to like do a fight sequence, like stabbing a person or shooting a person with an arrow and then picking them up and shooting the arrow through their body, it's not an easy task. Because you're a Navi versus a human being versus a digital representation versus, all sorts of different things. So that's not as easy. Like in a real world, I can just shoot a person with an arrow and then shoot the arrow through the person. I'm done. In the Avatar world, you have to do it 3 or 4 times. You have to do it on a stage. You have to do it in performance capture. You do it live action. Then you have to do it in, reshoots if you do reshoots. So it's quite the effort.
Yeah, and then I'm noticing you have to worry about the height difference because the Na'vi, they're much taller than the humans, and I guess you have to somehow take that into account as you're sort of shooting it. But
Absolutely.
wow, so that means like the whole the ship sinking scene where everything's tilted, and then everyone's sort of like trying to stand straight. Did you have like a stage that tilted and
For when what do you
when
mean? For
when the ship was sinking, and then now the floor is not flat and like they're
Oh, yes.
sliding
We were
down?
on a tilted, yeah, we were on a tilted stage. We built a stage 20 feet high above the ground, and it was on, a pivot point, and we just slowly kept tilting it, tilting it, tilting it. And basically, you start here and you fight on this ship that's built 20 feet high above the stage. And as it's tilting, like this, you eventually got to 90 degrees, and that's as far as we went. And then we started to go into the tank, and we had this ship come over on everyone in the water. So yes, we had to build a whole ship, and it was huge.
Whoa. And then you had to film, so you would film that same ship sinking fighting scene three times, you said, in three different settings.
Oh yeah. I mean, we do it in performance capture, and don't forget, in performance capture, you have two scales. You have Navi scale and human scale. So you have to shoot that twice. You have to shoot it on the performance capture stage, which is the dry stage, and you also have to shoot it in the tank. So that means you're shooting it four times because you have human and Navi both on a dry stage and in a tank.
And then what we're watching is sort of like a combination of all the different bits and pieces all together, and it somehow flows. It looks like it's just one scene.
It's amazing. It's like watching an artist. You see a person, Jim is amazing because your mind can't wrap around it. You can't say to yourself, how is this going to work, right? He says, don't worry, trust me, it will. And in the end, you're like, there's just no way. And then all of a sudden you look at pieced together on the screen and you're like, oh my gosh, it worked. It's amazing.
When you're watching it pieced together, could you see where each piece came from?
Yes. But
Um,
that's the hard part. You'll never see it.
I
It's
can't.
that seamless. Us, we know because we did it. We bled it. We did it for 6 years.
How was your experience working in the recent Roadhouse movie that has been released and shown everywhere around the world?
It's amazing. I had the best time ever. Jake Gyllenhaal's great. Doug Lyman. I mean, what a spectacular director. Nobody thinks like him. Seriously, nobody thinks like him. Jim doesn't think like him. Spielberg doesn't. He has his own brain, and it's wild to watch it. I loved the movie. I love what we did. I have a great experience on that set. Conor McGregor, what a gentle giant. What an amazing person to work with. He's just such a gentleman and such a tactician. He's great.
Yeah, I think there was an interview where like Connor like complimented you highly on how like the way you coordinated things, how the slaps, everything looked so real, and there was tricks to the trade that you were able to bring to the table. And it was like, man, like you'd watch it and it looked so real.
Yeah, that's because we had to come up with something where, you know, when a UFC fighter punches someone for real, they lean in and they hit someone. When you do it for a movie, you stay back away from someone you punch them because you can't hit them. So we had to come up with a way to bring that reality to the screen. And that's where I came up with this whole four pass technique where, you do a Hollywood pass where you just do it normally. Then you do another pass where you lean in and hit a pad for real. Then you get rid of him and you use a pad to hit the other guy for real so that he can just get hit and not sell it like a stunt guy does. Then you do another pass, a slow motion pass where you have a fist touching a face, and you take all elements from these different passes and you blend it into one, and you've got the shot that you saw.
Whoa, what about the famous shot in all the trailers of the slapping, where Jake is just slapping everyone?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Yep,
Wow.
we did the exact same thing.
That's so cool. In the first Avatar movie, you talked about it taking 5 years and you constantly having to go back, and every time you thought it was over, you'd be called back in. Was that redoing the same things again and again to perfect it? Was it new ideas Jim had? What kept you guys coming back for 5 years?
All of that. There was things that don't forget when we did the first Avatar, we were designing the technology while we were shooting the movie. And we were coming up with how to do that movie in such a real way. And while we were doing it, there was an awful lot of realization and education. And then Jim would come up with new technology and new ways of shooting things that he'd go back on. we got to redo that because now we know a better methodology of doing something. So we would sometimes do things over again because we do it better this time. Sometimes we were doing new things. He came up with new ideas and new storylines and new characters and new creatures. And so, the first Avatar, it was like a regular movie. The only difference is that for him, it was also a technological advancement. And in that technological advancement, I mean, look at Elon Musk. He creates a Tesla, right? And the Tesla in the first couple of years, it has all kinds of things going wrong with it. There's bugs in the system. It's a brand new technology. You got to figure it out. But nowadays, the whole world's adopted that technology and it has become, normality. Same thing with Avatar. Now everyone's adopted our technology and is using it, and it's become, a staple to the industry. But getting there was the first movie, and that was very difficult. And my hat's off to Jim. He's genius.
Is there any new tech that's being used in 2, 3, and these upcoming Avatar movies that not many people are using, but in the next 10 years, everyone's going to adopt it just like they did with Avatar 1?
I don't think so. I think everyone knows all about the stuff that Jim has created and people are using it. It's just that it's becoming more mainstream now. More people are becoming comfortable with it now. So simulcam is something he came up with, his own version of the 3D technology that he was shooting, as well as a whole new camera with the pace camera system. He was coming up with how to shoot motion capture underwater. And that's something that he did on number 2. And now that's being used on other films as well. So it's like everything. He comes up with new ways to fly the creatures, new ways to, we had underwater creatures that we were using jets on underwater, and we just come up with new stuff every time.
Working on Logan, any thoughts on the new upcoming Deadpool, Hugh Jackman sort of Wolverine movie?
I can't wait. Sean Levy's amazing. I love him. I hope he's listening. I can't tell you better things about any director out there. Sean Levy is the easiest director, sweetest, nicest. He makes movies that are fun, and he knows how to make them fun while he's making them. So he's great. Hugh Jackman, no one is more professional than he is. He's amazing. I can't tell you how great it is to work with someone like that on a movie set. He sits on the set waiting to be called. He doesn't go to his trailer. He's on top of things. He brings a level of complexity to his character as well as the action. He does all the action himself. I'm excited to see this new movie. I can't wait. Ryan Reynolds is hilarious. And then Hugh Jackman added to the mix. Come on, that's going to be a win-win. And then Sean Levy is directing. That's the trifecta. This movie is going to be beyond great. It's going to win everything.
Thank you so much. I want to be respectful of your time. Last 2 questions I wrap up these podcasts with. Goal and focus for the next 6 months.
No, get my movie made. Get my movie cast. Trying to get this cast is because most of the people that I want have jobs. They're going to do things, blah, 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 So right now it's not easy because only a certain amount of people are right for these roles, but a lot of those people that are right for the roles are doing movies. So it's like, all right, you're juggling, trying to find people, and they have to work together well. So it's not easy. That's my golden focus for the next 6 months. Get my movie cast and then get ready to direct it.
Love it. Where can people find more of you, Garrett, follow you, and sort of keep on the journey with you?
Instagram, I'm always on Instagram, Garrett X Warren. Facebook, I'm there as well. I have a website, just garrettwarren.com, no X in the name. And then, but I stay regular. Every day I'm on Instagram saying something, posting something, whatever. Sometimes on Twitter, not bad, but that's where I'm always at.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time today, Garrett. I really appreciate it. I love how that you're so humble. You feel like the journeyman. You're constantly learning, constantly trying new things, and you're so passionate about the space. And I really love the takeaways of the importance of relationships and like there's so many cool lessons that people can take into their own life, even though it's not movie related, if they're in a different field. So thank you for your time today. This was such an amazing conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. I had a great time. You do a real good job of just firing questions off and keeping it moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. Guys, if you made it this far, hope you guys got value from this episode. And I'll see you guys next week on another episode. Peace.
Peace.